Hi guys, Jeremy Molly with EndlessMartialArtsDrills.com, and I'm sure you've heard before your students or maybe even yourself talking about how I don't get any better when I spar beginners, or I don't want to spar with him, he's not as good as me, things like that. So I want to shed some light on that and talk about why it is extremely important to spar beginners, and it's a very important part of your training and how you can get better, and some challenges and things that you can do to get better when you're sparring a beginner. So we're going to start off with the 3 different types of people that you will encounter when you spar. Now this is being very generic, okay? You're going to encounter someone who's either way better than you, someone that your skill is pretty much even with or close to, and somebody that is way less skilled than you. And I think each one of those training partners is important. For instance, you're going to encounter the person that's extremely better than you. They just dominate you, and you're going to hear things like, "Oh man, how did he hit me with that?" And like, "God, I couldn't do anything against him. He's just so fast," or whatever. Now, when you spar people like that, it may be inspirational, and it's going to teach you how to survive. It's going to develop that survival mentality in sparring. Like, I sparred, the greatest black belt ever, or whoever, Muhammad Ali, whatever, and I survived. That's awesome, but that's if you do that alone, you're not going to improve. So the second type of partner you're going to spar is somebody whose skill's about even as you. Because their skills are even, it's kind of like your testing ground for things. You've practiced some techniques a lot, and now it's trying to execute them on somebody. You're going to be able to do things where sometimes they'll get the upper hand, but then other times you'll have the upper hand. So it's pretty even. That's a really important part of your training. It's where you test things out. Then you're going to have, where you apply things, I'm sorry. Then you're going to have the people who aren't as good as you. Somebody that may be younger, less skilled, less flexible, older, just not as good as you, and you're sparring them, and that is the time where you can actually try new things that you could never work on somebody who was your same ability, like things that you wouldn't be able to pull off. So what I did was I comprised a list of challenges to do when you're sparring somebody like that. So I'm going to read off of this so I make sure I get everything here. Number 1, what happens when you play a video game? I'm going to use Halo as an example because it's an extremely popular Xbox game. But you could just look at any video game model. After you beat the game, what do? Did they just say, okay, we'll play it again? And, no. They always have some kind of challenge or something that you can unlock and try, like a harder difficulty mode. Or, play with only the pistol. Survive the whole game with only the pistol. Or don't get hit the entire game. Or, finish the game in 30 minutes or whatever. So there's always some kind of challenge. So those kind of motivational techniques have been used in video games to much success. I use them in martial arts in my own training, okay? Parallel that with life. Number 1, one of the challenges you can do when you spar with somebody who's not as good as you, try to block every single technique and not get hit even once. Or try to just evade everything without blocking, like use movement, head movement, body movement, positioning, footwork to get you away from them where you don't get hit. Now these are, as you can imagine, these are things you wouldn't be able to do against somebody who's way better than you or even somebody evenly as skilled as you, okay? So this is your training ground for that. Number 2, use only your bad side. A lot of kickboxers fight on one side of their body. I know a lot of martial artists use both sides, and there's benefits and pros and cons to both of those methods of training, but everybody tends to have a bad side, even if you do train both sides. Put that side forward, use that, or only use your left hand if your left hand is weaker or something. Number 3, use only your hands or only your feet. What I mean by that is use only hand techniques against them, or use only your kicking techniques. Pick something you're weak at, and if you sparred somebody way better than you, you wouldn't be able to get away with doing that. Limit yourself to half speed. This one's really cool, and I'm going to tell you why. If you spar at medium speed, and this is very hard to do, but limit yourself to everything you do has to be like half the speed you could normally do it. 2 things are going to happen. Number 1, it's going to be really hard for you to hit people, and it's going to be really hard for you to evade things. Number 2, it's actually going to help the other person that you're sparring because they're not as good as you, and they normally couldn't keep up with you, and they wouldn't be able to block these techniques anyway. So by going half speed, it helps them improve, and it helps you improve too, okay? So that's a cool one. Use only low percentage or specific techniques. What I mean by low percentage is any technique that in the fight game is generally like a spin hook kick or something that you would say is not something you see all the time, and it's harder to do, it's harder to execute, butterfly kick, whatever. Use those techniques on people that aren't as good as you because you probably will never hit somebody that's way better than you, or even with those techniques until you work them. Okay, specific techniques like, man, my Superman punch is garbage. I gotta set that up. I gotta practice. Well, that's the time to practice against somebody who's not going to see it coming. Work slowly on problem areas. You might have some problem areas like, for instance, freezing up after a combination. Like, you do your combination, then you just stop and stand there in the pocket and then back out. Well, if you've got areas like that and things that you want to improve on are like keeping your guard up, you notice that your hands are down. The time to practice that is when you're working with beginners, not with people who are going to punish you for keeping your guard down. Number 7, work on counterfighting. There is no better way to practice counterfighting than with someone who is slower than you and you can see things coming. If you spar against people that are better than you or even of even skill, it's going to be very difficult to counter their techniques because you have to interpret the technique, you have to see it coming, and you have to be quick enough to beat them to the punch or the kick. So that's a good time to work on that. And number 8, coach your partner if you see them struggling with issues you may have already overcome. We all know, 99% of the people that I'm talking to in this video right now are martial arts instructors. And you know the benefit of teaching martial arts. You know that it actually makes your martial arts technique actually better when you have to get in detail and describe every aspect of how something works. So people have known that for years. So if you're working with your partner and you notice that they're doing something wrong that you personally have done for a long time and you found a way to fix it, you can stop them respectfully and say, hey, I see that you're having trouble keeping your hands up or whatever doing this. I know you got hit by that. I used to have that same problem too. Sensei so-and-so or Mr. Molly taught me this technique or this method, and you use that as an example to coach them, a learning opportunity for them and a technique for you to explain the technique properly. So I want to touch on this one thing. Remember, beginners are not punching bags. They're not your training dummies that you can disrespect. You have to treat them with respect. You have to spar them appropriately. You have to treat this basically in good spirit and allow them to improve too. You don't want to be that guy that just wipes the floor with them. These done in a respectful way can really help your sparring. So I hope those tips helped you out. Feel free to talk to your students about this kind of stuff. Feel free to do these in your own training. It'll really help you. So if you like this drill or these ideas and these kind of concepts, check out our website, endlessmartialartsdrills.com. Look on our YouTube channel. We got hundreds of videos. Thanks.